Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. Happy Friday. Just unbelievable how fast we're coming into the holiday weekend. I am so glad you're here with us for this broadcast. At Foresight, we're committed to improving the lives of people who live and work in senior living, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So we would love to hear from you about what you're doing to improve the lives of residents, team members, and family members. And we'd also love to hear from you about how we can serve you better, the things we can talk about, or if you've got an idea for a guest, maybe it's even you. We would love to hear about that. In addition to Foresight TV, we produce all kinds of really great content. LinkedIn posts where you're watching this now, the Foresight Podcast Tech Tuesday. And perhaps the most impactful thing we do is the Foresight website, where we publish new content every single day. It's free. It's easy to subscribe to. You can see the QR code on the screen, and you can simply scan it with your mobile device, or the link is in the chat, so you can use that. I appreciate so much your passion for making the world of senior living better, which is making the whole world better. The last thing I want to mention is that we are so excited about the first ever AI conference that is not really a conference. We're calling it the Foresight AI Lab. You will walk away with a solid action plan to use AI in amazing ways. If you're already using AI, it'll give you new ideas, better ways to do it. If you're not using AI, it'll be a good place to get started. Now, on with today's episode. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Elizabeth, welcome. I'm going to do a little tiny storytelling, about 30 seconds worth. We first met at a dinner that was hosted in part by ProCare HR, which is a company that you use and one of our great sponsors. At Nick this past fall, was it September, I think. And as we were talking, I was so enthralled with the work you're doing with memory care that I had to have you on to talk about what you're doing. But let's actually start by talking about you. I'd love to know who you are, where you're located, and how you got into this very unique business of senior living.
Steve, thank you, first of all, for inviting me on. You're officially my first. So this should be interesting. So I hope I can actually get through this. I'm a little nervous, I'm going to be honest. My name is Elizabeth Wright. I am based out of Minnesota, just outside of Minneapolis. About 7 years ago, I opened my first memory care community here in Lakeville, Minnesota. We started as a 32 suite community here, and we've since grown on this campus to add 60 additional apartments of memory care. We're continuing that growth as well throughout the Twin Cities area, and we're really excited about it. I got into the industry, quite frankly, because I've got a family history of dementia. It goes all the way back to, probably when I was about 9 years old and my great-grandmother was in a nursing home. Back when we didn't talk about dementia, we said people were senile. We, came up with all sorts of "she's just old" type of comments. And it's progressed along. I've got a couple of grandfathers who had dementia, a grandmother who thankfully I was blessed enough to have move in here. And then, I've got even more family that has dementia, and it's really an important thing for me to be able to provide great care, great location, beautiful building, but most importantly, it's the people. And it really is making sure that we have the right people in place to care for our residents.
So I've thought so much. So as a lot of our viewers and readers know, I'm walking a dementia journey with my stepfather. And I believe it's hereditary. His mother, I remember his mother when I was in my 20s. She had dementia. Her husband cared for her until she died, but I can remember so vividly one Thanksgiving where they were at the table with us, and she was, she could make some sounds, but she was really nonverbal, and just thinking about how horrible it was. And I have great admiration for his father who cared with him for the end, but it's really hard, and most people can't do that. And I suspect that she would have actually had a better life if she had been in a memory care community than others. But I've thought a lot. I've got a couple of friends, high school friends, who I know have a history of dementia in their family, and I've thought a lot about what that must be like to look down the path and know that they've got at least a higher risk. And I don't know what that may be too personal for you to talk about, but I'd love to have you, if you're willing to and comfortable talk about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a really tough question. I've got two stories about that. Obviously, my family has a history of dementia, but I also have a good friend of mine whose family had a history of dementia, and that friend decided to had a very specific possible gene and possible DNA that would kind of give them an idea of if they would have early onset Alzheimer's. And that friend decided to go get tested and found out that there was a high likelihood he was going to end up with that early onset Alzheimer's. He hasn't. He's in his 70s now. But the question is, it's out there, but do you get tested and make changes in your life that may slow that or lessen that? What do you do to make those changes within yourself? And are you going to act differently? Are you going to eat better? Are you going to work out more? Are you going to start doing more research and trying to help with your brain health at that time? Or are you just going to say, it is what it is, and we'll see what happens, and we'll have a plan in place if for some reason I actually do have it? But I look at it, and getting a little more personal, I look at it two ways. I was diagnosed with breast cancer back in 2020. My mother had breast cancer. I chose to never get genetically tested because for me, I didn't want to know, because if I did all of the exams, I did everything I was supposed to catch it early, we would catch it early and be able to treat something like it. It's what do you do with the knowledge that you have, and how do you prepare for it? And that goes even further for, your stepdad. Did he have a say in what he wants to do? Has he had that discussion? Has your family sat down and said, if this happens, what would you like?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, and for much of my family, having those discussions would be quite easy. For him, he has always been in denial. Even today, he would still, if I were to ask him about it, he would say, well, maybe I'm a little bit forgetful, but everything else is really fine. Except that it obviously really isn't. He doesn't really understand that today he's in a memory care community, as I was telling you before we went on the air, that we are getting ready to move him to assisted living, where he'll actually have a better functioning life. And so for each family situation, it's so different. And that's part of what makes it both, so dynamic and so much opportunity, but it also makes it very hard. So.
Absolutely. Everyone needs to make their own decision. Obviously, I personally think having people move in earlier in their progression with a form of dementia super important. And I say that because, when you wait till the end and you're waiting and you're taking care of your loved one in your home, it's great. It really is. But there's a lot of stress on the caregiver. And there's a lot of things that we don't look at as a society. The shortening of lives, the likelihood of a caregiver getting Alzheimer's or dementia, having their own memory support needs, and that just the medical side for the caregivers is one thing. But for the resident or for the loved one, what I see is that the earlier you get an opportunity to move into a community, the more likely you are to transition well. If you transition well, that means you're going to have a full life. For us, we've got life enrichment starting at 10 o'clock in the morning and ending at 7 o'clock at night. So we're trying to engage residents constantly. We have a number of outings. Actually, a group just got back a little while ago from bowling. So, these are, if you move into a memory care and you get those opportunities, it's similar to living at home. You know that you get up and go to the right to go to the bathroom. You get that muscle memory type of thing where you can kind of figure it out. And that gives you I see a more sustainable, longer better quality of life.
That's such an important thing. I really noticed that as from my perspective, particularly, I didn't kind of realize how far down the dementia path he had progressed living here in our home with us, because he had this very, the muscle memory that was very constrained, right? And once he started with the hospital stay, and it was there that it really became apparent. Of course, the hospital and the illness exacerbated that, but even though that sort of mitigated, it's clear that he's living in a memory care. And a big part of the memory care is for us as caregivers, because it was creating such a burden. So let's actually transition a little bit to your community. Tell me about the moments and what makes it special. You actually you shared with me before we went on the air something really, really cool. And let's start with that, and then let's dig into what makes what you do so amazing.
So, the state of Minnesota never had an assisted living license until 2021. And this year, they decided that they needed to with, the feds and make sure that they had their assisted living scorecard or report card. And they had access to all of our residents and all of our resident families. And they did their survey. Obviously, our residents are not as responsive as the families are. And I found out right before we came on that we got a 5-star rating by our resident families. And that truly means a lot to me, because it's not a 5-star rating by a little bit. It was like, if you looked at the averages of statewide versus what we were averaging percentage-wise of positive response and 5-star responses, it's an honor. It's awesome. And, it just makes me even more excited to continue this passion.
That is really cool. I'm not sure that I wouldn't say that the place where my stepfather is at is it's okay. But I certainly wouldn't be a 5-star rating, and it's adequate, and I don't think that should be good enough, right?
No. So I have to tell you, there's several different breakdowns of what topics they had in there, and one of the questions, I don't know the exact questions, but one of the responses specifically is that we were at 94.1% satisfaction with our housekeeping, which I think we all know doesn't always happen in facilities.
Yep.
But we're dedicated and committed to making sure that in the long run, everyone who moves in here feels like it's their home. We take care of it like it's my home, which we're really particular about. So But we just want to make sure that everyone has the greatest attention to detail. We literally have housekeeping in every one of the apartments every single day, doing deep cleans. We do have our own linens and towels, and do the resident laundry. They've got a laundry schedule, but they're doing it as necessary as well. So if there's a couple things in the laundry basket when they're in changing the sheets, they're going to go ahead and wash that. So, it's really important. There's nothing, to me, I think one of the things, Steve, you might remember is one of the worst things you can do is walk into a senior living or a memory care, and the first thing you get hit by is not how beautiful and nice and welcoming it is, but how bad it smells. And I refuse to allow that in any of our communities.
I'm so glad to hear that, because it's not horrible. In fact, my wife can't smell it, but every time I walk into the memory care portion of where my stepfather is, it's just got a little bit of an odor, and it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And as you point out, it doesn't have to actually be that way. So it's really unfortunate. Talk to me a little bit about life enrichment. And I mean, I think one of the things that I'm more and more focused on and more convinced is that where the win is for senior living is to create great living experiences, whether it's independent living, assisted living, memory care, and perhaps even with skilled nursing. I think much harder in skilled nursing because residents are so limited by their physical and mental implications. But I'd love to have you just talk to me a little bit about what it would be like if my stepfather were living in your community.
Well, see, if he was living in my community, first of all, I'd ask what his first name is to be absolutely polite. And then I would ask you, what are his likes and dislikes? Like, what was his favorite thing to do? What did you guys do together? And, what are the things that he didn't, and, what are the things he absolutely doesn't enjoy? I've got people here who love country music, so much so that one of the residents came up and said, "Can we have a country music festival?" And I said, "Well, yeah, we'll talk to Cecilia at Life Enrichment. Let's figure it out." We had a couple of singers in, we had themed days, and that was earlier this week. They had an absolute blast. It was wonderful. But other people might not like country music. So we're going to have on the, away from where the musicians are playing, we'll have some sort of arts and crafts type of thing where they're painting or they're creating like little headbands, or they're creating any number of things. But we always meet our residents where they are and what they like to do. We're not just trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So we really want to work with the residents and their families for best satisfaction, best of everything for them.
So one of the things that, and I'd never really thought about this before until my stepfather moved into memory care, was that even within the context of memory care, you can have a pretty wide range of capabilities and behaviors. So for instance, with my stepfather, in about an hour from now, I'm going to be sitting down at a restaurant at lunch with him and his stockbroker. And there will be, he'll ask the same questions over and over again, but we'll actually have a very appropriate, contextually appropriate conversation about his stock portfolio and where that's at and where it's going. And it would be, you might very well, if you were sitting at the next table and eavesdropping, and somebody told you he was in memory care, you'd sort of scratch your head and wonder, why is he there? And so but in his particular community, most of the residents, maybe all of the residents, are much lower functioning. How do you program when you've got this broad spectrum?
It's a really good question. What we do is, so we mix everyone together. if we have somebody who's got more, is maybe more wheelchair bound, kind of end of life, we're still going to include them in absolutely everything. We do table bowling where maybe the resident can't actually roll the ball or do any of that, but having them participate by being there, you can see the smiles on their faces and they're enjoying it. That's why we work with their families to understand what they love to do and what are the things that would bring joy to them. And if we look at how do we bring joy to the residents, then everything else kind of follows. We do one-on-one types of activities. Had a resident move in a while back who decided that they wanted to bring they were big ping pong players and they table tennis. So they brought a table tennis table in, and we've actually got that in part of our art room, figuring that's the safest place and most likely for our residents to be able to get in and use it when they wanted to. But, it was, there's lots of different things that we want to do. What we've tried to do is we understand that not everyone has the ability to do certain things, but everyone has the ability to participate, meaning they can all be a part of it. I don't like to walk through the buildings, and I'm here every day. I don't like to walk through them and see residents just sitting by the television unless there's a purpose for it. Maybe they're doing trivia and it's up on the screen, or maybe it's movie night, or maybe it's something like that. But just to sit there and watch television, that's not really something I like to see. So we're always active as much as possible with, working. They do little exercises. They have reminiscing games. They do some trivia. They do face type of things. They do arts and crafts. And like I said, we've got outings, which in reality, when I talk about outings, Steve, you don't find that too often in a memory care. Like you'll hear about assisted livings and independent senior livings having buses that take people on outings. But we have our own bus. We take our residents on outings twice a week, 2 or 3 times a week, I guess. And, it goes from going through to look at the holiday lights to, like I said, they went to a bowling alley today and they were bowling this afternoon. Those, it's not about what they can't do. It's making sure that they enjoy what they can do.
I love that so much. So I want to talk about a couple more things. We've got about 7 minutes left. The first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about the family experience. One of the things I've become so aware of, in fact, probably when I get the article written today about, I feel like the family experience is largely a missed opportunity for so many senior living communities. And so I always worry when I started down these paths, right? Because we haven't had a conversation about, we're going to talk about this. So I hope I'm not running you down a dead end here, right? But I think that, just sort of some simple stuff by the community reaching out and saying, how are things going? What could we do that would be better? How can we support you better? I'm just not seeing the sort of what I would consider to be pretty basic kinds of things. So what would it be like if I were a family member and I had Gary in your community?
Wow. Well,
that wanted his first name, so I had to get that in there, right?
Yeah, I like it. That is a fully loaded question because it could take more than 7 minutes.
Okay.
But what I will tell you is that if Gary's here, right, our first date, I like to start from the very beginning, and I'll explain why. I think our experience of having family members come in and tour, you get the feeling for the community. You get the feeling for how the CNAs are interacting with residents. You get the feeling for how the life enrichment is interacting with the residents. You get to see the hustle and bustle and whatnot. And for me, that's really important. Like, I can tell you we're great, but until you see it and you come, which you're going to have to come and visit us at some point in time, Steve. But unless you come, you really can't experience it. When you move in, we actually offer, as part of move-in, we offer free moving. Really, we have a moving team that comes out. You point and say, "I want this to go. I don't want this to go." We bring everything back to the community in our box truck, in our moving truck, and we will set everything up in the apartment as close to the way it was in someone's room or home before. We wash everything, we clean everything, we make sure everything is ready to go, and we just try to take that stress off. And once you arrive with Gary, and you were to come here with Gary, we have you sit down for a wonderful lunch so you can experience what our meals are like, so you know, yeah, we made the right choice. This food is top notch, made from scratch, absolutely delicious. And then we introduce all of the leadership, from Life Enrichment Director of Nursing, ADON, Assistant Executive Director, Marketing. Everybody comes up and introduces himself. For that's our beginning, and it doesn't stop there. We do want to continue the communication. What you find is companies who don't want to do that, it's because they don't want to know what people are saying. And I've invited I invite families to tell us, I want to know if something's not perfect. We're never going to be 100% perfect, but I want to know what we need to improve. And eventually there's a pattern. We have in the past done bi-monthly Zoom calls where we give an update, kind of a state of the state type of thing. We started that during COVID. In the last 6 months or so, we've gotten away from a lot of that. We might bring it back again over the winter because those updates are important. Health, we're not talking about individual residents, but we're talking about the greater good. And the other thing is that, the things I didn't get to tell you, right, is the fact that we've got so much outdoor space here at the moment. We also, where I'm sitting right now is actually the second floor of what we call the Westwood Hills House. Mm-hmm. The Westwood Hills House was specifically designed and created so that resident families, first and foremost, could rent it out to celebrate their loved ones' birthdays. We've had wedding showers. We're having a baby shower tomorrow. They've done anniversaries. We've done memorial services and everything else, and it's absolutely gorgeous on the first floor. But bringing family here and making them feel like they're a part of the community, we always welcome family. We always want them to come in. We don't have anything to hide, so in that fact, I think it helps families feel comfort knowing that we're here and we're not running away from anything.
Yeah, so I love that so much. I think, as I said, I think it's the greatest opportunity. So we got 1 minute left. I want you to talk to me. You've got very active TikTok and Instagram channels, right?
Yes.
So we don't have time to look at those today. We probably should have queued one up, but I'd like to hear a little bit about your sort of philosophy of why you do that.
Stories are the best part of living, right? I mean, that's really is what it is. We wanted to make it so that people felt comfortable, because there's still a stigma about memory care and dementia, and similar to, if I have mom go there, she's going to be really uncomfortable and unhappy, and maybe she's not ready for it. We've got really lively residents. We've got a great community. And for us, it was, how can we get that out? Obviously, we get approval from families that we can have the loved ones on TikTok and Instagram. I'll tell you, when you get a minute, go back to late December 2023. I believe it's pancakes and French toast. That is our resident council meeting from 2020, probably November 2023 or somewhere in there. That was recorded. It is, not only is it absolutely fantastic, but it's representative of what and how we listen to our residents.
I love that. I can hardly wait to go look for it. I think that the thing that you said, and I wish we had a little bit more time to talk about this, is that storytelling is key. I find that universally senior living communities, when they do storytelling, what they mostly do is storytelling about resident histories, which are lovely and fine. I'm not saying that shouldn't be done, but I so rarely do we tell the stories about how a senior living community is transforming a resident's life, how it's transforming a family member's life, how it is creating great life experiences for people with who are older, who are, in the case of memory care, people who have dementia, or in assisted living or independent living, just making their lives better in those last chapters. So I love that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, the storytelling is key. It is. You know, we talk about reminiscing, we talk about all of those things, but in reality, it really is trying to break through and make sure everyone understands that stigma isn't what it was 30 years ago, and that it's okay. And you know, the only thing I'll say is the greatest compliment I got was from a husband, actually from a daughter, who said to me, "I want to thank you." And I, of course, said, "I want to thank you for trusting me with your mom." And she said, "No, I want to thank you for allowing my dad to be a husband for the last 4 months instead of a caregiver. That's really what we want to do. We want to give that time back to the families and care for your loved one."
Absolutely. Elizabeth, thank you. Wonderful conversation. You did perfect for your first time. And what I should have told you before we started was that you and I are just going to have a conversation. We're going to let the rest of the world listen in. So thank you very much for joining us. I do want to so much come visit you and explore your community. So appreciate your time, appreciate your passion for both your residents and your family members. And we will be back next week with a couple of great shows on Tuesday, Tech Tuesday, and Foresight TV next week. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you have an amazing weekend.
Thank you.